High Admiral Vexterra of the Galactic Council stood motionless before the vast observation window of the Council's central chamber on Nexus Prime. Her iridescent scales shimmered in the light of the three setting suns as she studied the holographic display of yet another devastated colony world. 17 systems lost in the past solar cycle, she announced to the assembled council members, her voice carrying the weight of countless years of military service. The Void Swarm continues to advance, and our most advanced weaponry seems to barely scratch their hulls. The chamber, normally filled with the political squabbles of over 30 spacefaring civilizations, had fallen into an unprecedented silence. The Void Swarm had appeared 6 months ago from the depths of intergalactic space, a vast armada of biomechanical ships that consumed everything in their path. They showed no interest in communication, no desire for resources or territory. They simply destroyed. First Counselor Zinra, their tentacles writhing with anxiety, finally spoke. Our combined fleets have lost over 40% of their strength. The Arcadian defense grid, which has stood for 10,000 years, fell in mere hours. We need alternatives. You can't possibly be suggesting what I think you are, interrupted Counselor Dex, his crystalline form pulsing with angry red light. They're barely more than primitives. Vexterra knew immediately who they meant. Humans. The Council had discovered Earth nearly 50 years ago, but had chosen to merely observe rather than make contact. By galactic standards, humans were infants, having achieved faster-than-light travel mere centuries ago. Their technology was considered crude, their political systems chaotic, and their tendency toward conflict troubling. But they had something the Council species lacked. They were survivors. I've studied their military history, Vexterra said, bringing up new displays. They adapt faster than any species we've encountered. Their technological progress in the past century alone is unprecedented. While we perfect single solutions over millennia, they create hundreds of imperfect but effective ones in years. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices of protest and support. Vexterra waited for the chaos to subside before continuing. We've been monitoring their space. They've been building ships, a lot of ships, more than we expected. And they're different. The display shifted to show human vessel designs. Unlike the elegant, standardized ships of the Council species, human ships showed a bewildering variety of forms and functions. Some were massive and heavily armored, others small and agile. Some appeared to be designed for purposes the Council's analysts couldn't even determine. They call their primary fleet the Solar Defense Force, Vexterra continued. But our long-range scans suggest they have at least 3 other major fleet components we haven't been able to classify. Their ships use technologies we've never seen before, some principles our scientists don't even understand. First Counselor Zinra's tentacles had stopped moving, a sign of deep thought among their species. You believe they might have weapons that could harm the Void Swarm. I believe they might have weapons we've never imagined, Vexterra replied. Humans have a peculiar obsession with preparing for worst-case scenarios. They call it paranoia, and they've built entire defense systems around threats they've only imagined. Counselor Dex's crystalline form had shifted to a more neutral blue. Even if we wanted their help, how do we approach them? We've been watching them for decades without contact. They might see us as hostile. Vexterra activated her final display. A transmission intercepted from Earth's military command just days ago. It showed grainy footage of a Void Swarm scout ship at the edge of human space. They already knew something was coming. They've detected the Swarm's advanced scouts, she said. Their military forces are already mobilizing. I suggest we make contact now, on our terms, rather than wait for them to encounter the Swarm unprepared. The Council chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Their civilization spanned millions of years, thousands of species, and countless technological achievements. Yet here they were, contemplating asking help from a species that had only recently learned to split the atom. First Counselor Zinra rose from their seat, their voice carrying the formal weight of Council law. High Admiral Vexterra, you will lead a diplomatic mission to Earth. Offer them full council membership in exchange for their military assistance. But be warned, if humans are as adaptable and innovative as you suggest, we may be introducing a force into galactic politics that we cannot control. Vexterra bowed slightly, hiding a small smile. With respect, First Counselor, I believe that force is exactly what we need right now. As she left the chamber to prepare for the mission, Vexterra couldn't help but wonder what other surprises humans might have in store. The Council had watched Earth for decades, believing they were studying primitives. Perhaps, she thought, they had been watching the galaxy's next superpower take its first steps among the stars. In her private quarters, she reviewed the classified files one more time. The Council didn't know about her secret project, the deep analysis of human military capabilities she'd been conducting for years. They didn't know about the simulations showing human tactical innovations consistently defeating traditional Council strategies, and they certainly didn't know about the encrypted transmissions she detected leaving Earth's solar system, suggesting human influence might already extend far beyond their home system. Tomorrow, she would lead a diplomatic mission to Earth. But tonight, she would prepare for what she suspected would be the beginning of a new era in galactic history. The Void Swarm was coming, yes, but so were the humans, and Vexterra wasn't entirely sure which force would end up changing the galaxy more. The massive Council diplomatic vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, and High Admiral Vexterra felt her scales tingle with anticipation. She had expected a cautious welcome, perhaps a small escort of human ships. What she saw instead made her secondary heart skip a beat. Multiple contacts, her sensor officer reported, voice wavering. Thousands, no, tens of thousands of vessels. They're everywhere. The space around Earth wasn't just defended, it was transformed. Massive orbital rings circled the planet, studded with what appeared to be shipyards and defense platforms. Countless ships moved in precise formations, their designs unlike anything in the Council database. But most striking were the structures that seemed to defy physics itself, massive geometric shapes that appeared to bend space around them. Message from Earth Defense Command, the communications officer announced. They're welcoming us. A holographic figure materialized on the bridge, a human woman in a crisp military uniform. High Admiral Vexterra, I'm Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We've been expecting you. Vexterra managed to maintain her composure, though her scales had shifted to a startled purple. You knew we were coming. Admiral Chen's smile was polite but knowing. We've been monitoring Council communications for decades. Your encryption is excellent, but we broke it about 30 years ago. We've been preparing for this meeting ever since. The implications were staggering. The Council's quantum encryption was supposed to be unbreakable. If humans had defeated it so long ago, what else had they achieved in secret? Perhaps, Chen continued, we should discuss the Void Swarm threat somewhere more comfortable. The Artemis Station has excellent facilities for interspecies diplomatic meetings. As their ship was escorted through the human defense network, Vexterra's tactical mind was racing. She counted at least 5 distinct classes of capital ships, hundreds of carrier groups, and something her sensors insisted was either a small moon or the largest warship ever constructed. The Artemis Station itself was a marvel, a massive structure that seemed to be partially phased into another dimension, making it virtually impossible to target. As they docked, Vexterra noticed something even more surprising. Alien species she didn't recognize, walking freely among the humans. Admiral Chen met them at the airlock, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. I apologize for the deception, but we needed to be certain of our capabilities before revealing ourselves. The species you see here are refugees from civilizations beyond Council space. We've been providing them sanctuary and incorporating their knowledge into our defensive preparations. The meeting room overlooked Earth, and Vexterra could see the massive construction projects continuing across near-Earth space. You've built all this in secret. How? Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology, Chen explained. It's our paranoia. Since our first steps into space, we've been preparing for worst-case scenarios. Hostile aliens, cosmic horrors, extradimensional invaders. We've developed countermeasures for threats we hadn't even confirmed existed. She gestured to a holographic display showing the void swarms advance. When we detected their first probes 3 years ago, we accelerated our preparations. The fleets you see are just our visible forces. We have other assets in place. Vexterra's diplomatic training warred with her military instincts. The humans weren't just ready for the void swarm. They had been preparing for something like this for generations. And they had done it all while making the Council believe they were primitive newcomers to space. Your offer of Council membership is appreciated, Chen continued, but unnecessary. We're not interested in political positions. What we propose instead is a military alliance. The Void Swarm isn't just a threat to the Council. It's a threat to all life in the galaxy. We have technologies and strategies we believe can stop them, but we'll need the Council's cooperation. A new hologram appeared, showing ship designs that made Vexterra's tactical computer throw up error messages. These are our Thanatos-class vessels, Chen explained. They're designed to fight enemies that don't play by conventional rules of physics. We have 12 battle groups ready to deploy, with more under construction. 12 battle groups, Vexterra asked, trying to comprehend the scale. The entire Council fleet only fields 8 comparable forces. Chen's expression grew serious. High Admiral, what you're seeing here isn't just Earth's defense force. This is humanity's answer to a question we've been asking ourselves since we first looked up at the stars. What if we're not alone? And what if what's out there wants to kill us? As if to emphasize her point, a massive vessel passed by the station's window. A ship that seemed to absorb light itself. That's the ESS Nightmare scenario, Chen said with a hint of pride. The first of our planet-killer-class vessels. We built it because we imagined someday we might need to destroy a world to save humanity. We have 6 more under construction. Vexterra finally understood why her secret analysis had suggested avoiding conflict with humans at all costs. They hadn't just been preparing for war. They had been preparing for the end of everything, building weapons to fight horrors they had only imagined. And now, faced with a real cosmic horror, they were ready. The Council will need time to process this, Vexterra said carefully. This level of military development, it will frighten many of our members. With respect, Admiral, Chen replied. They should be frightened. Not of us. We have no interest in conquest or domination. But the Void Swarm is coming, and what we've built here might be the galaxy's only hope of survival. The question is, will the Council stand with us, or do we face this threat alone? As Vexterra prepared to return to her ship, she caught a glimpse of something through a restricted access portal. Rows upon rows of ships unlike anything she'd seen before, their very existence seeming to defy reality. She realized that what humans had shown them might just be the tip of a very large, very well-armed iceberg. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be leading the charge. The first battle against the Void Swarm began exactly as High Admiral Vexterra had feared, with chaos, but not from the humans. The combined Council fleet, even with its thousands of years of tactical doctrine, broke formation almost immediately when faced with the swarm's overwhelming numbers. The biomechanical horrors seemed to fill space itself, their chitinous hulls reflecting the light of dying stars. Council vessels are retreating from sectors 7 through 12, her tactical officer reported, scales pale with fear. The Arcadian defense line has collapsed. But where Vexterra expected disaster, she witnessed something else entirely. The human fleet didn't panic. They didn't retreat. Instead, they began to move in patterns that seemed random but carried an underlying purpose she couldn't quite grasp. Admiral Chen's voice came through clear on the command channel. All Council vessels, maintain your current positions. What you're about to see might be unsettling. Eclipse Protocol is now active. The massive human dreadnought, ESS Nightmare Scenario, suddenly began to emit readings that made Vexterra's sensors scream in protest. The space around it seemed to twist, and for a moment, she could have sworn she saw multiple versions of the same ship occupying the same space. Multiple temporal incursions detected, her science officer reported, sounding bewildered. The humans are. They're attacking the swarm through different points in time simultaneously. The Void Swarm's advance faltered as their ships began to explode without apparent cause, destroyed by weapons that would fire seconds in the future or had already fired in the past. The humans had weaponized causality itself, but that was just the beginning. Small groups of human ships began executing what they called impossible space maneuvers, flying in patterns that violated every known law of physics. They would disappear into spaces too small to contain them, emerge from points that didn't exist, and somehow be exactly where the swarm didn't expect them. Phase shift technologies, Chen explained over the command channel, seemingly amused by the Council fleet's confusion. We discovered them while trying to find ways to hide entire planets. Turns out they work pretty well for ships too. The Thanatos-class vessels proved even more terrifying. They didn't so much fight the swarm as they rewrote the rules of reality around them. Space itself seemed to reject the swarm's presence wherever these ships appeared. Reality enforcement fields, Chen said casually. We developed them after theorizing that sufficiently advanced hostile entities might not follow our universe's laws of physics. The field simply insists that they do. Vexterra watched in amazement as sections of the swarm fleet simply ceased to exist, their impossible biology unable to maintain coherence when forced to obey conventional physics. But the true shock came when the human fleet unveiled what they called their last resort weapons. Ships that had appeared to be standard carriers suddenly split open, revealing massive crystalline structures inside. Consciousness disruptors, Chen explained, her voice now serious. We weren't sure the swarm had anything resembling a hive mind until today. But if they do, she paused. Well, let's just say we've had some experience dealing with collective consciousness threats. The crystals pulsed with energy that didn't register on any known spectrum, and entire sections of the swarm fleet suddenly went dark. The biomechanical ships didn't explode or break apart. They simply stopped, becoming lifeless hulks drifting in space. As the battle continued, Vexterra began to understand why humans had kept their true capabilities hidden for so long. They hadn't been developing weapons to fight current threats. They had been developing weapons to fight anything. Their paranoia had driven them to create countermeasures for threats that existed only in their imaginations, and in doing so, they had accidentally prepared themselves for a threat no one could have predicted. Admiral Chen, Vexterra called over the command channel. These technologies, they violate dozens of Council treaties on weapons development. Chen's laugh was warm but carried an edge. That's the funny thing about preparing for the end of everything, Admiral. You stop worrying about rules and focus on survival. Everything we've built, every law of physics we've bent or broken, has been in service of one goal: making sure humanity survives whatever the universe throws at us. The battle lasted another 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt after the first temporal strikes. When it was over, the Void Swarm had been pushed back for the first time since their arrival in the galaxy. In the aftermath, as debris from thousands of swarm ships drifted through space, Vexterra received a private transmission from Chen. The human admiral's face was serious. What you saw today was just the beginning, Chen said. We have other weapons, other strategies, things we hope we never have to use, but we will use them if we have to. Because that's what humanity does. We survive. Vexterra looked out at the battlefield, where human ships were already adapting their weapons and tactics based on the data they'd gathered. She realized that the galaxy hadn't just gained an ally against the Void Swarm. It had gained a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for this moment, whether they knew it or not. And somewhere in the depths of space, The main body of the Void Swarm was approaching. But for the first time since this war began, Vex Terra felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. The Council's central command center on Nexus Prime lay in ruins. The Void Swarm had launched a massive counterattack, striking at the heart of galactic civilization with a force that dwarfed their previous assaults. But among the wreckage, High Admiral Vex Terra noticed something peculiar. Human engineers were already at work, not just repairing the damage, but improving upon the original designs. The attack wasn't entirely unexpected. Admiral Chen explained, stepping through the holographic reconstruction of the battle. We detected quantum fluctuations suggesting a major swarm movement, but we needed to understand their response to our new weapons. Vex Terra's scales shifted to a deeper shade of blue. You knew they would attack here. We predicted several possible targets. Nexus Prime was the most likely. Chen gestured, and the hologram expanded to show the entire sector. What we didn't expect was this. The display showed thousands of new swarm vessels, their designs radically different from before. They had adapted to the human weapons, developing countermeasures to the temporal attacks and reality enforcement fields. The swarm was learning, evolving. Perfect, Chen said, surprising Vex Terra. They're thinking exactly like we hoped they would. That's when Vex Terra understood. The humans had wanted the swarm to adapt. They had revealed enough of their capabilities to force the swarm to evolve in a specific direction, but not everything. Operation Pandora's Box is now active, Chen announced to the assembled fleet commanders. The hologram shifted to show new human ship designs, ones that made even their previous vessels look primitive. These are our true weapons, developed specifically for an enemy that can adapt to anything we throw at them. The new ships were unlike anything Vex Terra had ever seen. Some seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, while others appeared to be made of pure energy contained within crystalline lattices. But most disturbing were the vessels that seemed to break down and rebuild themselves continuously, their very form in constant flux. Quantum architecture ships, Chen explained. They don't just adapt to the enemy, they adapt to the enemy's adaptations. Every countermeasure the swarm develops becomes a new weapon in our arsenal. The council representatives present looked on in mixed horror and awe as Chen outlined humanity's true strategy. They hadn't just been fighting the swarm, they had been conducting the largest military experiment in galactic history, gathering data on how the swarm adapted and evolved. The Void Swarm operates on principles of continuous adaptation, Chen continued. So we gave them exactly what they needed to adapt to. But in doing so, we've led them down an evolutionary dead end. Their new forms are perfectly suited to counter our first-wave weapons, but completely vulnerable to what comes next. Tactical displays showed the new human fleet moving into position throughout Council space. Each vessel was unique, its design constantly shifting based on real-time quantum calculations of swarm behavior patterns. The humans hadn't just built a fleet, they had created an entire ecosystem of living weapons. We call it the Darwin Protocol, Chen said, her voice carrying a mix of pride and solemnity. Our ships aren't just fighting the swarm, they're outvolving them. Every engagement makes our fleet stronger, while the swarm becomes more specialized in exactly the wrong direction. The first engagement with the new fleet proved Chen's words prophetic. The swarm's adapted forms, so effective against humanity's earlier weapons, were helpless against the quantum architecture ships. Every attempt to evolve new defenses simply created new vulnerabilities that the human vessels instantly exploited. This is why we kept our true capabilities hidden, Chen explained to Vex Terra as they watched the battle unfold. We needed the swarm to think they understood how humans fight. They needed to believe they could adapt to us. Because in the end, their greatest strength, their ability to evolve and adapt, became their greatest weakness. The battle for Nexus Prime became a turning point in the war, but not for the reasons anyone had expected. The Void Swarm, for the first time, began to retreat not just from individual battles, but from entire sectors of space. Their evolutionary advantage, which had made them seemingly invincible, had been turned against them by human ingenuity. As Vexterra watched the quantum architecture ships systematically dismantle the swarm's forces, she realized that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to think like their enemy, to understand not just how to fight them, but how to make them fight themselves. The war isn't over, Chen cautioned as they observed the swarm's retreat. But they're beginning to understand what they're really fighting. Not just a species with advanced weapons, but one that has spent its entire existence preparing for enemies exactly like them. Every nightmare we ever imagined, every horror we prepared for, it all led to this moment. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was leading that change. But as Vexterra watched the quantum architecture ships continue their relentless evolution, she wondered if perhaps the galaxy had changed humanity just as much.